Hi everyone, it's Zoe, and welcome back to another video. Today we'll be talking about how to practice less. In the music world, life can get so busy so easily, so how do we get the best quality practice in the least amount of time? In my first semester as a sophomore in college, I really almost injured myself. I was doing entirely too much. So in the spring semester, I made it my dedication to try and practice less. That sounds like really crazy when you're in university and you're trying to learn all these things to practice less, but it's really what I needed. And through this process, I learned how to get the most improvement spending the least amount of time in the practice room. And it worked. My teacher commented that I was getting better every single week I played in studio and even after my lessons. The first principle is to pair solutions with helpful mental cues and motions. Over the years playing violin, it gets much easier to recognize your own bad habits and patterns. So this comes a lot easier over time. And I found that it's easier to experiment and associate different mental cues with the corrections to those problems. Some examples of those cues for me personally are to think of weight, especially on an up bow, as scooping the bow, like you're digging into the string. Another cue that helps me is to mark visual cues. So whether that be the ribs of the violin or they could be visual cues relative to your fingers. Where a previous finger is placed, you can make that a visual cue for the next note. These are some examples that I found help me, but it's very useful to figure out your own. This way you're learning while you're practicing and you'll pick up on motions which need to be made and motions which don't need to be made. Technique should be applied in everything that you play. What's the benefit of doing focused, intentional practice on intonation for 10 minutes and then the rest of the 15 minutes you pay little to no attention to intonation? So in each practice session, apply everything in everything. If you tend to have trouble making smooth bow changes, make it a habit to try and get your bow changes to be as smooth as possible every single time. If you have bad intonation, always work on intonation. If you have inconsistent sound, always strive for, oh, there's a lizard. If you have inconsistent sound, always strive for the best sound. It sounds elementary, but with this process, you'll be continuously refining your technique and improving your ear to pick up those little things. And I have a confession, I don't practice my scales as a warm-up. I know I should, but during school, I usually have music that I need to prioritize. So I've had to come up with a way to still incorporate fundamentals and make progress on the pieces that I need to learn. So my practice has evolved from taking sections of my pieces and making those into warm-ups instead of doing traditional scales or exercises. So if the problem is with the shift, I'll only practice that shift. Even throughout my practice, I try to keep it targeted and deliberate. Targeting the hard parts every single time you go to practice. Actively listening and critically thinking about why certain sections are causing me problems and how to fix it. And I'm thinking about every motion I'm making and every sound that comes out of my violin. Also, a really helpful tip is to record yourself when you're doing this, because it's much easier to pick up on things you don't like when you're hearing it in sort of like third person. I'll admit practicing this way will probably be super boring, but it is so beneficial. And it really is the most efficient way to improve without spending 5+ hours in a practice room. Though I've said all this, at the end of the day, practice as much as you need. If that is 5 hours, then go for it. But in whatever amount of time you practice, make sure it's always the best quality and you're doing the most efficient work you possibly can.